Thank you very much for joining us here today. My name is Neha Jha. I am a product support engineer here at Zoho One Classic Support. So I'll be your speaker for the day. Let me just quickly share my screen and we'll just start. The topic that is up for today's discussion is custom integrations made easy in Zoho One. If I were to give you an understanding of what this topic signifies, I would say Zoho One giving unique features, approaches to connect Zoho's in house application with any third party application using simple tools to help achieve a certain business solution. Let's look at a small use case. This is about a bookstore. It was named as Zilker Midnight Pages, and it was owned by a young woman named Emma. Emma sold all kinds of books here. Naturally, the business became quite hit due to its unique idea. When this company was just a startup, however, Emma believed that if she handled things manually, it would help her connect well with her customers. This way of thinking was not wrong at all as a startup. However, she was now dealing with customers which were tenfolds to what she had initially started out with. Emma used lots of softwares, but she would have this constant problem with making sure the datas are in sync between these softwares. And she would find herself spending time of manually syncing the data from one app to another. This was very time consuming for her and it eventually started becoming a headache. Emma finally decided to explore the digital part of the world and started searching for applications which can help her with the sort of connectivity her business required. And this is where she came across Zoho One as an option. Zoho One, as you may all very well be aware of, is a suite which contains 45 plus enterprise level applications. The best part about this suite is the ability to connect between the applications that are present in this service. So the applications are not stranded anymore and they are not isolated from each other. You just have to do a small setting which will help you connect these apps and the data will flow from one app to another. Emma was really happy with the default integrations that Zoho One offered her. But now she was thinking two steps far ahead. Emma wanted to customize her automation, which would be tailor made connection, keeping her business requirement in mind. So the next question arises, why do you think we need a custom integration? Why can't we just use the default integration that we already have in the market or in Zoho One? So let me answer that for you. We can all agree that businesses come in different shapes and sizes. One size may not fit all. And that is why instead of saying it becomes a need, I would say it becomes a necessity to create an integration that suits your business requirement. And that's why Emma thought that a custom integration would be helpful for her. She, however, did not want to spend money on hiring high end developers to create the sort of connectivity her business required. And she wanted the default options that were available. So, this is where I introduce you to the concept of low code development. Low code development, or I could almost say no code development, depends on the concept of less coding. So, earlier days, when you would think of connecting two different applications together, you would think of writing lines and lines of code to achieve a small automation. But now, with the help of this low code development, the code is actually written in the backend. And the application that follows this technology will give you the ability to drag and drop the components to create a sort of automation that best suits your business needs. So now that we have briefly understood what low code development is, let's also look at the application that follows this concept. And this is where I will be talking about Zoho's in house application called Zoho Flow. Zoho Flow is a cloud based integration and automation tool within the Zoho's ecosystem that allows you to connect different applications and automate workflows without writing code. So, by using a simple drag and drop interface, you can create flows that triggers actions across various applications based on specific condition. So Zoho Flow promotes the connectivity of multiple apps. Is not just Zoho's ecosystem. So third-party applications also can be added here, and you can create automation to help achieve your business requirement. Currently in Zoho Flow, we support 900 plus applications. Every time when you create a flow, right, there would be two things that you would have to keep in mind. The first thing would be a trigger. So trigger is nothing but an event that kickstarts your flow. So for example, creation of a record could be considered a trigger, or updation of a record could be considered a trigger. So now that you have kickstarted the flow, the next thing would be to create an action. That would be the next course of action that needs to automate after a flow has kickstarted. So that is what you call as action. So these are the two components that you would normally use while creating flow. There are, however, instances where you would need a logic as well. So let me just give you an example on what basis you would use these logics. So consider Zoho CRM and Zoho People. Okay. And these two applications will have fields that you would create. For example, date field. Okay. When you're creating a record in CRM, let's say a lead record, it has a date field, and you would like to fetch this information of date and map it to any date field within Zoho People. There are instances where the format of this date field could be different from CRM, and it could be a different format in Zoho People. So when you try to connect this two fields and try to map these fields together, there are instances where the format may not be supported and the flow could end up in a failure. So to avoid such cases, we have the concept of logic, where you could write a small code where you can convert this format that you have gotten from CRM and convert it into the supported format that you would feed into the system within Zoho People. So these with this small change, you can make sure that your flow is successfully running. There are other logics as well that are available in Zoho Flow that we will be covering in the later parts of this session. So now that we have gotten a brief understanding of what or how a flow would be created, let's look at the sessions breakdown of what we are about to learn today. Today, I'm going to take you through various components that are available within Zoho Flow. We are also going to be looking at the triggers that we have in Zoho Flow. So currently we have 6 triggers. So I will show you one by one how these triggers can be used. And we are also going to check certain use cases that our past customers have reached us with. So without any further ado, let's just get into the system and see how Zoho Flow works. So this is where you will be when you open your Zoho Flow account. Starting off with, you'll be able to see My Flow section, where you'll be able to see all the flows that you have created or are going to create. Okay. Now, deviating slightly away from this topic, I want you to focus on this Explore Gallery section. Normally, uh, when you create a specific, I guess my screen is not visible to you. Just give me a moment. Let me just reshare it. I hope it's visible now. Okay, thank you. So I'll just continue. So this is where the Zoho Flow would look like. Basically, in the My Flow section, you will be able to see all the flows that you will create or you have already created. And this is what I was talking about, the Explore Gallery section. So for instance, if you think of creating a flow, uh, you need to understand what are the triggers and what are the actions supported for the application. So the best way to identify that is through this Explore Gallery option. So for example, if I want to know what are the triggers and actions supported for Zoho CRM within Zoho Flow, I'll simply select that application here, and here I'll be able to see all the triggers that Zoho Flow currently offers and all the action as well. So for example, if you're trying to connect two different applications together and you want to know simultaneously what are the actions versus the triggers that are supported in both the applications, you can use this and see whether your requirement is feasible or not with Zoho Flow. Apart from this, we have certain pre-built flows as well. So in past, our customers have reached us with a certain requirement which we thought that could help other users as well, which or who may be using a similar application. So we have created certain predefined flows as well. So if you think uh, this particular flow works with remotely similar to what your business requirement is, you can just read what this particular flow does, and you can use the option of use this flow and simply start using the flow without having to create it all together. Once you click on this use this flow, all you have to do is simply map the fields that are relevant to your organization. So this is how the explore gallery section would work. And apart from this, the next thing I want to walk you through are the triggers that we have in Zoho Flow. So currently in Zoho Flow, we support 6 triggers. So let me show you what are these triggers one by one. Starting off with the most basic trigger, which is called app trigger. So the best way to explain this is if any event occurs in any specific application, this is what you will be using. So for example, if you have a new record created in Zoho CRM, so you will be using this app trigger, and you will have to type in Zoho CRM, and then you have to, let's say, a new module entry, because a new record is created in a specific module. You can use this and kickstart your flow. So this is how app trigger would work. The next trigger which we have is a schedule trigger. So for instance, if you want to run a flow that would be a recurring flow or a one-time flow, you can use this schedule trigger, and you will have an option to set the frequency for this flow. So depending on your business use case, you can set it daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or once. And once you choose the frequency as well, you will have to add the start date for that specific like flow trigger. And once you have added the start date, it will start triggering from that specific date and time you have mentioned. And depending on the frequency, it will run every time. So this is how schedule trigger would work. The next trigger which we have is a webhook trigger. So although I did say we have 900 plus applications currently supported in Zoho Flow, there are instances where you could be using an application which may not be available in the Zoho Flow app. So for such cases, we have given you the option of webhook. So when you click on webhook and click on configure, you will be able to see a URL generated. This URL is what you get from Zoho Flow, and this URL needs to be passed on to that third party application. So webhook is not a foreign concept, and it's not exclusively for Zoho Flow. There are other third party application as well which uses this concept. So what it does is this third party application, which would be sending data to this URL, it should actually first of all support the sending of data to this URL. So only through the automation from that third party, if it supports sending the information to this URL, you will be able to use this webhook trigger. So this is what webhook trigger is all about. When you pass information from that third party, it will come under Zoho Flow as a form of payload. So a payload is nothing but it refers to the data that is normally transferred between the application during the execution of a flow. Specifically, the data which is sent in or out of a webhook or a trigger or any action. So it will come in the format that best suits Zoho Flow, and you can use the information to map with the remaining parts of your flow. So this is how a webhook trigger would work. The next trigger that we have is a URL trigger. It's actually quite similar to the webhook trigger that I just spoke of, but there are key differences between the two. Let me just give you these differences. So in webhook trigger, you will be the one creating this URL, and you will have to share this URL with a third party app. However, in the URL trigger, that third party application would be sharing the URL where it sends the data either through API or any automation. And that URL needs to be added here, and then you can kickstart your flow. Another difference between the two is webhook works on real-time basis. So for example, if I create a record now, the webhook would trigger automatically without any delay. But if I use URL trigger, there it would be on the basis of polling. So, for example, if a record is entered now, it will check on the basis of frequency, like between 10 to 15 minutes. It will see if there is any new information that was added to that URL, and if yes, it will kickstart this flow for you. So this is how URL trigger works. Let's look at our fifth trigger, which is the email trigger. This is quite similar to parser. So as Zoho One customers, you may have come across application called Zoho CRM where email parser is generally used. So for those who may not know about this, let me just give you an idea of what this parsing is all about. So email parser, what it does is when you create a parser, there would be a parser address. Okay. And you will be sending an email from your mail account to this parser email address. And once this email is received, you will have the ability to create variables out of these. So variable is nothing but in system, you'll have system variables that are built-in variables provided by the platform that stores your default information about any flows execution. So in such cases, when you use email trigger, the flow execution works on the basis of each and every time a email is sent, right? So you will be using this, and you will be able to first of all create a template that would be taken into consideration when the very first email is sent to that parser address. Okay. And the next time an email is sent, it needs to make sure that that specific template which we have created, it follows the same template. Then only this trigger would happen. So the template is the main thing here. So let me show you actually what I'm talking about. Once I click on this email, this is the parser address which would get created within Zoho Flow. So all you have to do is simply copy this, and when you are sending an email, you can simply add that as a to address your recipient and simply hit send. So once the message is sent, you'll have to wait for a moment here to start to show that data as a form of payload. So once you see the information here, then you will have the ability to create variables out of it. So when I say variable, for example, consider this designation, right? So designation name could be same, but each time a new email comes, the answer to this designation could be different, right? So right now it says product support, but a second email, if it comes, it could be a different value. So that is why we will be creating a variable to store the value in a dynamic fashion, and this value can later be passed on to the remaining actions or the remaining sections of your flow. So this case, I'm just going to add a designation, and this is now a variable stored. So every time, whenever a new email comes in with a email format similar to what you see on the screen right here, you will be able to grab the info and you'll be able to send that into the next part of the flow. This is how email trigger would work. And then the final trigger that we have in Zoho Flow is RSS or Atom feed. So, in simpler terms, it's like a news delivery system. So, when a website normally adds any new content, like publishing an article or podcast, so these are normally new additions to a website, right? So, this RSS, in short for really simple syndication, is instantly updated, and anyone which is subscribed to that particular feed will get a update right away. So this feed where you are going to get update will have a URL as well. So what you can do is simply get that feed URL, and every time any person updates or adds a new content to that website, you can simply send notification to this feed, and this feed will in turn kickstart your flow. So these are all the 6 triggers which are currently supported in Zoho Flow. And now I want you to focus on the use cases of our past customers. So the first use case of the day is actually Zoho CRM and Zoho projects. So in past, our customers have reached us stating that they would normally use Zoho CRM application to keep track of sales, and what they would be doing is every time a sale is closed one, it's a sale done for you, right? So they would start working on the project for their clients. So for now, what they were having difficulty with was every time a deal is considered closed one, they had to manually create a project every time. So they wanted to avoid this and they wanted to automate this. So let me show you how we can do this with Zoho Flow. It's a very simple flow. Here, as you know, now that we have understood what each of these triggers are, uh, the trigger that we will be using for this specific flow would be an app trigger, because the event is going to occur in Zoho CRM. And the event that I'm talking about is the updation of a deal record, right? So that is why we will be choosing Zoho CRM as a result. And here I will be choosing an update module entry because I want this flow to trigger every time a record is updated. Okay. And the very first time when you try creating a flow, you will see an option called connections. So this connection is nothing but when you normally add a trigger or an action in a flow that involves any external application or Zoho's internal application, which Zoho Flow normally needs permission to connect to that app. So this permission is normally established with this help of connection. So before you start creating the connection between CRM and projects, the very first thing is to create a connection. So here, all you have to do is name the connection and simply choose accept. And once you have done it, the connection is successfully created. After this, we need to choose the module for which we are doing this update. In this case, I will be choosing deals module. And in this instance, we also have to add a filter. The reason being, since I have chosen update module entry, there are instances where other updates could also happen for a specific deal record. But I don't want a project to be created each time a small update happens on the deal, right? So how do we do that? To make sure that we categorize the creation of the project only when the deal is closed one. This can be done with the help of a criteria that you can add here. So here, in this case, I will be adding stage as closed one. You'll have to manually type that in and I'll simply hit done. So this is now a trigger created successfully. Now there's a small thing that I will be adding here, which is, let's say every time a deal gets created, a deal gets converted or is marked as closed one, I want the project to be created and the owner of this project should be the same person who is the owner in the deal record. So how do we do that? We can actually, first of all, fetch the information of that particular user from the CRM. So we have a trigger called fetch user, which can be used for this specific settings. And in this, again, since this is an action, as I was saying, all trigger and action involves a connection. So we need to choose a connection. And when we use a fetch user action, we have two ways to fetch a user, either a full name or an email address. I'm going to choose email address now. And when we normally update a deal, which field will actually give you the information of user? It will be the owner field, right? So that is why I will be choosing the owner field here and I'll simply map that here and done. So now we have successfully fetched the entity from CRM as well. The next thing is to actually create a project, but we have yet to fetch the details of the user from projects. So that is why our third action would be to fetch the user from projects. And we need to map with the info that we got from the fetch user from CRM. So here you can see the email address field that is available within Zoho projects fetch user icon, right? So now that I successfully fetched the information from CRM, I'll be able to see certain entities of that particular user. So email address would be an entity that I will be able to fetch. So all I have to do is simply click on this and map that email address and hit done. Now I have successfully fetched the user as well in Zoho projects. And finally, it is just to add a action to create a project. So you will have multiple fields here. I, for one, am choosing to simply map the deal name with the project name, but depending on your business requirement, you can choose to map any fields that you are seeing here normally. And one more thing we will be mapping here, which would be the owner. So in my account, I currently only have a single user. That is why you're able to see only one person. But in your instances, there could be multiple internal users involved, right? So if I choose Sneha here as an option, the problem would be each time a record or a project gets created with the help of this flow, it will choose my name by default. But that would not be the case that we are looking to achieve here. What we want to do is pass the information dynamically from CRM to projects. And that is why I will be choosing to use a custom value option. So this custom value option allows you to manually enter a static or a dynamic value instead of selecting a predefined field from an app or a trigger. So that's why once I choose the custom value option, I need to fetch the information from the projects this time. So these are all the actions that we were able to fetch so far with the help of actions that we have dragged and dropped from Flow. So now with the fetch user section of Zoho projects, I simply will be mapping that info with the user's email address. And once I have mapped this, my flow is successfully created. Let me show you the working version of how this flow would look. So for this, we need to actually convert a deal to closed one. So we'll just use this as an example. And when I mark this as closed one, it should create a project within Zoho projects. So as you can see, it shows that it's completed. And in the output, you can see whether it was a success or a failure. You'll be able to see all the information of that projects here as well, actually. So now if I open my Zoho projects, I should see a project created with the same deal name that I just marked as closed one. And this is what you are seeing here. This is how this requirement was possible. Let's look at another use case. This involves Zoho Books and Zoho CRM. So when you use Zoho Books and Zoho CRM, a lot of you may already be using these two applications and you would have already connected these two applications. So um, as I was saying, in CRM, you mark or create deal to see how much sales has happened, right? So when you use Zoho Books and connect it with CRM, when you create any transactions like invoice, you have the ability to select a potential or a deal for that particular invoice to know that this invoice is generated for that potential. So eventually, when you see the information in the CRM side, you'll be able to see under the Zoho Finance related list the particular invoice listed. So now customers have reached us in past where they had a use case that every time a invoice is marked as paid, they would like the associated deal to be closed automatically. Previously, we used to inform our customers to use or make use of functions, but now I will show you how we can use this within Zoho Flow. So let me show you how we can do this. Again, our trigger would be an app trigger because this involves Zoho Books application. So we will choose app trigger here and we will choose Zoho Books app. And the next thing would be to choose on what action this needs to happen. So in my case, since I am working with invoice, I will be choosing whenever an invoice is updated. So there should be a trigger which is remotely similar to what we are trying to achieve. So this is what we will be using. Invoice updated. And once you use this, again, the connection is the same. Previously, I created a connection for CRM. Similarly, when you start using new applications in Flow, each time you need to create a connection and connect it with Zoho Flow in order to fetch the information from that app. So then the next thing would be organization. So there are instances where one login would be used, but there could be multiple organization that you could be accessing within a single login. So we need to ensure you add the organization for which you are trying to achieve this action. In my case, I only have a single org. That's why it's selected by default. And then we need to choose the field for which it should look for updates each time this flow is running. So in this case, we will be choosing status field because status field is what would show you whether an invoice is marked as paid or it's overdue. So status field is what will give you that info. And again, we will add a filter here because we only want this to work when the status is paid. So that is why we will add status contains paid and simply finish setting up our trigger. The next thing is to simply add one more action, that is to update a Zoho CRM deal record. So when you normally create an invoice and when you associate that invoice with a deal, when you actually update that particular invoice, as I was telling you, each trigger comes into Zoho Flow as a form of payload. So this payload actually contains the data of that deal or potential ID as well. So that is what we will be using to map that information and update that exact deal for which the invoice was created. So that is why we have Zoho CRM here, and I will simply be choosing to use the update module entry, and I will choose deals module here. The connection has to be of CRM, which I have already created. That's why I've chosen that. And here I will choose the deals module. And here, this is the entry ID that would be passed dynamically. So this is where we need to pass that potential information. So as I was saying, whenever an invoice is paid, or you kickstart a flow with the help of updation of an invoice, you get the information of deal as well. So we need to make sure that works dynamically, and that's the only reason we are mapping this with potential ID. There are other fields involved here as well. So depending on your use case, you can choose to map whichever field you want. In my instance, I just want to update the deal to closed one. That's why I'm choosing to map only the stage field, and I'll simply hit done. So that's all actually for this flow. Let me show you a working version of this flow as well. We'll directly go to Zoho Books and see how we can create an invoice first of all. So here we'll just create an invoice. And this is what I was talking about, associate potential. I guess this particular customer does not have a potential, so we choose a different customer. Let's choose this one. And yeah, here we have a potential. So we can map this potential with this invoice, and we'll simply add an item, and I'll just save this for now. And now I just have to mark this as paid in order for me to kickstart that flow. So I'll record the payment now. We'll just go back to this flow and check the history to see how this functions. We'll have to wait for a moment here. And as you can see, the flow is successfully completed. So here you'll be able to see that stage was marked as closed one successfully. So this is how a flow like this could be created to update a deal when a specific invoice is marked as paid in Zoho Books. Let's look at one more instance. Another use case that I have for you today. This is in specific to Zoho CRM and Google Sheet. So a lot of our customers actually handle a lot of different kinds of apps. So it's not just Zoho's like in-house applications. They also use third-party apps. So what they would do is they will use these Google Sheet to connect that Google Sheet with that third-party application. So they always want this Google Sheet to be constantly updated. So that's why requirement came into picture where these customers wanted a way that whenever a new record is created in CRM, they wanted to create an entry within the Google Sheet. And if the record that was created a second time, if the email address or let's say any unique entity, if it is passed into Google Sheet, they wanted to see if a record is already present in the Google Sheet. Instead of creating a new entry, they wanted to update the entry. So let's see how we can create a flow like this. So again, you will be starting off with naming your flow. And again, here we will be choosing an app trigger. So the app trigger would be Zoho CRM. So because we will be choosing CRM and we will be choosing for which module we are creating this, right? So I'll choose CRM here and I will choose new module entry because this will be whenever a new entry is made to that particular module that I will be choosing, this flow will kickstart. So that's why I will be choosing the new module entry. And again, I will have to add a connection to this and I will have to choose the module for which this trigger is about to happen. In my case, I'm keeping it simple. I'm choosing leads module and simply I'm hitting done. I don't want a filter here because I want every time a record is created in CRM, this flow should trigger. That's why I'm not adding any filter. The next thing is for us to actually fetch information from Google Sheet. Why we are doing that is because once we created a record in CRM on the leads module in this instance, we would get the data in the form of payload, right? So now on the basis of this payload, we'll be able to get unique and dynamic entity on the basis of each trigger. So using this unique entity, first of all, we need to see if a record is present in that Google Sheet. So that's why we will be using the fetch row action to fetch all the rows present in the Google Sheet and see if the particular record is already present or not. So when you use the fetch row action, you will first of all have to open that spreadsheet that you want to connect with Zoho Flow, and each of these spreadsheets will have this unique URL, as you can see highlighted there. This URL is what you have to copy and simply paste it here in that spreadsheet section. So once you do that and once you hit search, you will be able to connect that specific spreadsheet with Zoho Flow. So here in my spreadsheet currently there are 4 fields: first name, last name, email address, and phone number. So I don't see that yet because I'm not trying to create a record. I'm just trying to fetch an entity from an already existing record. So that's why now I will have to choose the value on the basis of which I will be fetching that entity. So in my instance, email address is what I consider unique in Zoho CRM leads module. So that's why I will be mapping this value with the email address that I got from the new module entry trigger. And once I have mapped it, I also want to map or the field that I have in Google Sheet, I need to make sure it searches that particular column only. So that's why I'm choosing email address here. And once this is done, I will just hit done. And now we have a logic involved here because we need to see whether a record is available in the Google Sheet or not. That's why we will be using a logic. We'll be using a decision logic. But I would like to take a moment here and explain you what these 3 logics are. So we have 3 logics. Set variable. So set variable is nothing but if you use this option, if you are getting any information when you are triggering a flow, you have the ability to store that information in a form of variable. So this variable can later be used in remaining parts of your flow and you can store it in a dynamic function. So this is set variable. The second logic we have is a decision. So decision is nothing but based on the criteria. So you will have one criteria that you can add or multiple criterias which you can add. And depending on whether it satisfies or it doesn't satisfy, you can create 2 separate flows. So basically, if it satisfies the criteria, one action will take place. If it doesn't satisfy the criteria, another set of action will take place. So that is what decision is all about. And then the third one, which is a delay function. So there are instances where you would be using a flow which may be dependent on the default integration as well. But even if the application gives you the form of instant sync, there are instances where it would take at least a moment or two to sync that information from one app to another, right? And if you are dependent on that default integration to do the next action in your flow, what if that flow just triggers before the default sync had taken place? So in such cases, the flow will fail. So that is why you add a delay action to delay the flow until the default integration has done its job. Once the default integration has done its job, the delay will like stop. Depending on the delay, you can add hours, minutes, and seconds. So you can add 1 hour, 1 minute, or 1 second, depending on how your delay should work. You can make use of this and create a flow with such logics if needed. In this instance, we are going to be using decision, and I will simply be dragging and dropping this decision box, and I will be adding the row ID here because, as I was saying, each rows that we have in the sheet contains an ID, and we need to fetch that particular row on the basis of this ID, and we need to ensure that particular row only gets updated when we are able to find that the entry is already present. So that's why I've chosen row ID is null. Row ID is null. In simpler terms, it's nothing but row ID, it will be checking email address. If there is no record present in the particular sheet that I have chosen here with the same email address that I have added in CRM, this condition will not satisfy. This condition will satisfy, and then a set of action will take place. So in this instance, I will be creating a record if there is no entry added in Google Sheet with the email address. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm dragging and dropping the create row section. And again, I have to add that particular spreadsheet. And now I will be able to map all the 4 fields I have in my spreadsheet. So I will map the first name and last name and email address that I have gathered from the module section. And I'll be able to map that info back into my create row section. Yeah. So email is mapped now, and then I will just hit done. So now what this does is, if the condition satisfies, it will create a row. If the condition does not satisfy, that means there is a record present in the Google Sheet with a particular entity that I have already added in CRM. The next thing I will be doing is I will update the row based on that row ID that I just added in the condition. So that's why I'm choosing the update row section. And again, I need to add the particular spreadsheet for which I'm doing this. And as you can see, we have row number here. So we need to ensure that particular row only gets updated. And that's the reason we are mapping this row ID here. And the same way, uh, since I got the information from new module entry, I need to map the fields from that like trigger point itself. So first name, last name, email address, and phone number. So I'll be mapping that information, and I'll simply hit done. So this is how a flow like this could be created. Let's look at a working version of this flow as well. Okay. So we are going to now create a record in Zoho CRM leads module. It's very simple. We just have to create a record, add the last name and an email address, because that is the identifier I'm choosing, if you remember. Now that I've added the email address, I'll simply hit save and go to the history and see, and it shows that the flow is completed. You can see under the output. Now we will also open that particular sheet. Yes, I have not opened that sheet yet. Let me just open that quickly. So this is the sheet that I'm using. And as you can see, a record was created because there was no entry added in the Zoho CRM with that information. So now what I'll do is now I'll create another record, but this time I'll make sure that the email address is same and the information like the last name and other things will be different. So we'll just go back to CRM again. We'll simply just clone this. The email is same. Simply add random first name and last name and hit save. So this time the information should be updated. As you can see, the information was updated instead of creation. You can also see that in the recent trigger here. So I hope you're all able to see my screen. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. We have now like added an entry where we can see the update row action, and we were able to find the fact that if a row is present with the same email address, we can simply update the entry. So this is what, or this is how you could create a flow like this. I do have one more use case for you, which is about Zoho Books and Zoho Desk. So there are instances where our customers, they did not want to give access to their internal users for Zoho Books application. So not everybody is involved in finance, right? So this company consider a big company. They have segregated their employees. They have Zoho One license, but they have segregated the employees into smaller sections, and each of these employees have a designated work. And there would be a specific employee or a set of employee which would be given access to certain applications. But there are instances where you need to know certain information from an application which you may not have access to, right? So is where I bring to you our fourth use case for the day, which is Zoho Books to Zoho Desk connection. So consider the fact that there are agents available within Zoho Desk who do not have access to Zoho Books account, right? So, but they still need to know because they are dealing with the customers anyways in the form of tickets in Zoho Desk. They still need to know if by any chance the customer owes the company something or not. So until and unless they have access to the Zoho Books account, there's no way for them to know this, right? So we can create a flow actually that could give you that information by fetching certain information of that particular transaction created for the customer, and we can update it into the ticket as a comment. So this is what I have for you in store. Let me show you what I'm talking about exactly to give you a better understanding. So here, what I will be doing is, again, we will create a new flow, and our trigger would be again a app trigger because the information is going to be fetched from tasks or from desks. So what we will be doing is each time we create a task for a specific ticket, that particular ticket will be associated with a particular customer. Okay. And this same customer will be available within Zoho Books with your native integrations. So any transaction created for that customer, you will be able to fetch the outstanding balance. Outstanding balance is nothing but the balance that your customer owes you. So if there is any invoice which is created and which is not yet in the paid status, that is the amount that your customer owes you. So that information you can fetch and you can update it into a ticket so that your customers or your internal employees who have access to, let's say, just Zoho Desk will know the amount your customer owes you, and they can handle the tickets or the conversations through Zoho Desk. So let's see how we can achieve that. In this case, we will be using a Zoho Desk trigger. And since I was talking about the fact that we will be doing whenever a task gets created for a specific ticket, we need to choose the task created section. Now, this task, again, a connection would be involved. So you will have to create a connection for Zoho Desk. And portals is nothing but the way I was referring to you about organization in Zoho Books. There are different ways of managing multiple portals as well within Zoho Desk with a single login. In my instance, I only have a single portal. That's why it's selected by default. So in Zoho Desk, you have the option of departments, right? So what if you want this to work only for a specific department? That's why you will be choosing that particular department and you can make this work. I do not need to add any specific criteria here because I want this flow to trigger each time a task is created for a specific ticket. So the next thing is for us to actually fetch that ticket because whenever you create a task, you will have the task ID, but you will not have the details of the customer for which you have created the task, or for that particular ticket only will have that information. That's why we need to fetch that particular ticket now. Only when we fetch the details of that particular ticket, we'll be able to identify, let's say, email address of that contact. And using that email address, we can fetch customers from Zoho Books. So that's why we will be using a fetch ticket action here. So this is what I will be dragging and dropping. And again, I will be searching on the basis of ticket ID, and my search value would be that. One second. My search value would be an ID again. So let me just show you. And then department again, I need to choose. Once I've chosen the department, I now have the information of the contact person for which this ticket was created. So I got the email address information now. So now I can fetch the customer from Zoho Books because with the help of that email address, it's possible for me to fetch that information now. So that is why our third action would be to fetch the customer, and I will be doing it on the basis of contacts email address. Then since we got that information from the fetch ticket section, I just need to map that email that I got from fetch ticket section to Zoho Books to make sure the information is passed dynamically. And I'll simply hit done. So now I was successfully able to fetch the customer. Now all I have to do is uh, choose Zoho Desk and update or add a comment to that particular ticket and make sure that comment is added for that particular ticket only. So we will be choosing create ticket. I guess we will have an option to create a comment for a ticket. Let's see where we can find that. This is the one that we need. So create ticket comment. And since we need to pass the information dynamically, we will be passing it with the help of ticket ID. We need to make sure that it updates that particular ticket ID. That's why we are updating that information from fetch ticket section. And now I will just add a content. So let's say amount pending. And I will be able to fetch the information of that receivable amount that my customer owes me. So outstanding receivable amount it is. Once I have mapped that, I'll simply hit done. So this is now a flow created successfully. Let's see how it works in real time as well. So let me take you to the working version of this flow. We just have to go to Zoho Desk and now create a task for a specific ticket, and let's see how this will work. I'm using this this ticket, and I'll simply just go to the activity section and create a task out of this, right? So a random task. Now I need to go back to that particular flow, and I should be able to see a entity showing that it's completed. So here I can see it is completed and it has added a ticket comment as well. So if I go now, so for that customer, there is only one invoice which is created, which has the amount of 200 rupees. So that's why that customer, now I know for a fact that this customer owes me 200 rupees. For example, for that customer, if there are, let's say 5 to 6 invoices created, it will actually sum that amount and it will show you here. This is how this flow can be created. So I do have one final use case for you that is involving Zoho Books and Zoho Analytics. So if you have used Zoho Bookings and Zoho Analytics. So if you have used Zoho Bookings application, specifically the 2.0 version, you can see that we have the option of creating reports as well from that app. But the thing is, the report is not quite customizable there. So we have a very good application that can help you create advanced reports. So that is why we can create for that we need to pass that information into analytics, right? So let's see how we can create a flow which can help us pass that info from bookings whenever an appointment is closed, and then create a entry to the particular table, and based on that table only you will be creating reports in analytics. So let me show you how that would work. We'll just go back to this flow again. Our trigger would be an application here. Simply just add a name to this flow, and this time we will be choosing Zoho Bookings as an app. So here I'm choosing Zoho Bookings, and I want this to work each time an appointment is marked as completed. So that's why I'm choosing this appointment marked as completed option, and simply make sure, actually there is no need for us to add a criteria or a filter, I believe. The moment an appointment is marked as completed, we'll just make this work. And the next thing is to simply create a row in analytics. So of course, if you have used analytics, you must know that there would be like a workspace for each and every product that you connect with analytics. So if you are like trying to create a new workspace altogether, you will have to create a workspace and then you'll have to create a table for that. After you have created the table, you'll have to name the columns of the details that you're trying to get from Zoho Bookings. To give you an idea, this is the table that I have created. Okay. And these are the information that I'm trying to currently fetch from the Zoho bookings. So these needs to be created to make sure that you're able to map that as well. So now I will simply just choose Zoho Analytics and simply choose create row action. And in my instance, I have a workspace called Zoho Bookings, which I just showed you is created. And the name of the table also is Zoho Bookings. That's why I have selected that. And these are now certain fields that I will have to map. So customers, first name, last name, or we can just map customer name altogether. The email field, the email of the customer, we can add the start time and the end time for that particular appointment. We can also add the duration for that particular appointment. So all of this information will come once the appointment is marked as complete in Zoho bookings. And then there are instances where you would need service name as well to identify how many bookings you have done for a specific service. So you can choose to map service as well, depending on how you would like your like application or that uh, report that you create. You can map the field that is needed. And this user field, why I have added is because sometimes user has requirement to create reports on the basis of who has attended that particular appointment. That's why I'll be choosing staff here and I'll simply hit done. So now this flow is also completed. Let's look at the working version of this flow. So now all we have to do is go to Zoho Bookings and mark a appointment as completed. So once this appointment is completed, it should create an entry to that particular table that I have just shown you under the Zoho Analytics. And once you are able to see that record here, you will be able to actually see that entry here. And based on that entry, you will be able to create reports. This is just one form of report. But if you know in analytics, you'll have multiple ways of creating a chart or a pivot view or a summary. So these are all the reports that you have available. So depending on your requirement, you can start creating reports based on the information that you get from Flow. So these are all the use cases that I had for you today. And I hope that you were able to take at least some pointers from this webinar today. In the end, I just would like to say that Zoho Flow is actually a very powerful tool for automating and simplifying your business. So by creating these custom integrations between these applications, we have eliminated the point of doing an action repetitively. We have also reduced manual errors, and we can save time by creating certain automation that can help achieve your business requirement. So thank you very much. That's all from my side. Thank you.